My daughter-in-law slapped me across the face at 8:42 p.m. in the Briarstone Hotel ballroom, while 130 wedding guests watched my glasses break on the polished stone floor. She did it because I would not hand her the keys to my paid-off condo. My son stood beside her in his tuxedo and looked at the floor like the woman who had raised him had become a problem he hoped would disappear. What neither of them knew was that the condo title record was already in my attorney's brown accordion file, along with the lease guarantee, the venue invoice guarantee, the senior residence paperwork, and 32 months of transfer ledgers with my son's name on every page. Brielle thought she had just embarrassed an old woman into giving up her home. What she had really done was drag her wedding straight into the file I had been preparing for 6 months. The first thing I heard after the slap was not the band, it was silence. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. A champagne glass hovered in one woman's hand. The photographer lowered his camera, but I noticed the little red recording light was still on. Somewhere near the back of the ballroom, a child whispered, "Mom, what happened?" My cheek burned, but I bent down slowly because my glasses were on the floor in two pieces. One lens cracked across the middle, one arm twisted like a broken insect. Without them, the ballroom turned into a blur of candlelight, white tablecloths, black suits, and faces pretending not to stare. Brielle stood above me in her satin gown, breathing hard, her veil pinned perfectly into her blonde hair, her lipstick still clean, her eyes bright with the kind of triumph that only comes from believing the room belongs to you. "That," she said, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear, "is what happens when a mother refuses to help her own son." I held one piece of my glasses in my palm. The little screw had come loose. My fingers were shaking, but not because I was afraid of her. They were shaking because my son still had not moved. Trevor stood 5 feet away, one hand pressed against his jacket front, his wedding ring newly shining on his finger. He did not look at Brielle. He did not look at me. He looked at the floor, at the exact place where my glasses had shattered, and said in a low voice, "Mom, please don't make a scene." It is a strange thing, hearing your child say that after someone else has hit you. For one terrible second, my mind did not see the man in the tuxedo. It saw the little boy who used to run into my kitchen after school with grass stains on his knees and ask if I had cut apples for him. It saw the 6-year-old who once cried because he stepped on a caterpillar by mistake. It saw the teenager who stood beside his father's hospital bed and promised me, with tears running down his face, that he would never leave me alone. Then the ballroom came back into focus, and I understood that promises made in grief are sometimes only costumes people wear until life asks for something expensive. Brielle smoothed the front of her wedding gown, as if my cheek had been the thing that wrinkled it. "You've had that condo long enough, Marlene," she said. "A woman your age does not need 2 bedrooms downtown. Trevor and I are married now. We need a proper start. You can move into one of those senior apartments we showed you. It's not like you'll be alone. There are activities." Several people lowered their eyes. No one corrected her. No one said, "She is not too old to live alone." No one said, "You do not get to decide where another woman lives." No one said, "You just hit your husband's mother at your own wedding." The closest thing to kindness came from an older server near the wall, who took one step toward me and then stopped when the wedding planner touched her arm. I rose slowly. I could feel tears on my face, not the loud kind, just the hot, silent kind that comes when humiliation has found the exact room where your dignity was standing. I placed the broken glasses into my small black purse. Brielle's mother, Kathleen Carver, leaned toward a woman beside her and whispered, "She always overreacts. This is why Brielle worries about her living alone." That whisper reached me clearly. Perhaps the room wanted me to hear it. Perhaps cruelty travels better than music. I looked at Trevor one more time. "Did you know she planned to ask me for the keys tonight?" His mouth opened, closed. His eyes flicked toward Brielle and back to the floor. That was my answer. I turned and walked out of the ballroom with my vision blurred, my cheek burning, and my purse pressed tight against my ribs. Behind me, the band began playing again, weakly at first, then louder, as if music could mop up what everyone had just witnessed. I walked past the guest book table, past the framed engagement photo, past the sign that said Trevor and Brielle, forever begins here. In the hotel corridor, the air smelled like carpet cleaner and lilies. I took out my phone, squinted at the screen, and called the number I had memorized after my husband died. "Loretta," I said when she answered, "it happened." There was no confusion in Ms. Rhodes's voice. "Where are you?" "Briarstone Hotel, wedding ballroom." She slapped me. She demanded the condo keys in front of everyone. A pause, not shock, calculation. "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Did Trevor defend you?" I looked through the glass doors at the blur of guests moving inside the ballroom, the blur of my son standing beside his wife. "No." Another pause. "Then I'm coming now," she said. "I have the title record, the lease guarantee, the transfer ledger, the venue guarantee packet, and the senior residence file. Do you want me to bring everything?" I watched Brielle laugh at something near the head table. She had already recovered. She believed the worst part of the night was over for me, and the best part was about to begin for her. "Yes," I said, "bring everything." My name is Marlene Voss. I am 69 years old, and until the night my daughter-in-law hit me in a hotel ballroom, most people in my family thought I was harmless. That was not an accident. I had spent years becoming the kind of woman people underestimated. I drove a 12-year-old silver Buick with a dent near the rear wheel. I worked 3 mornings a week at a flower shop on Bridge Street, trimming stems, wrapping carnations in brown paper, and helping widowers choose sympathy arrangements, because I knew the difference between grief and performance. I bought my sweaters on clearance. I used coupons. I carried the same black purse for 6 years because the zipper still worked, and I had never seen the point of replacing a useful thing just to impress people I did not respect. Brielle saw all of that and built her opinion of me around it. To her, I was a soft old widow on a fixed income, sentimental, tired, grateful for crumbs of attention from her and Trevor. She thought my condo was the only valuable thing I had because it was the only valuable thing she could see. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, a balcony facing a narrow park, 1 underground parking space, and a deed with only my name on it. Paid off. No mortgage. No lien. No co-owner. No promise to anyone. What Brielle did not understand was that before I ever arranged roses at a flower shop, I spent 27 years working in the Franklin County Records Office outside Dublin, Ohio. I was not a lawyer. I was not glamorous. I was not rich in the way people imagine rich women are supposed to look. But I knew documents. I knew the difference between a deed and a wish. I knew what a signature meant and what an unsigned paper meant. I knew that people who wanted property often started with concern, moved to pressure, then tried to make the owner look confused. I had seen it happen to widows, brothers, cousins, stepchildren, and parents who trusted the wrong person with a key. My late husband, Stanley, used to say, "Marlene, you can tell a person's character by how they behave around something they want but do not own." For the first year after he died, I did not want to believe that saying could apply to my own son. Trevor was 38 when he met Brielle Carver. He brought her to my condo on a Sunday afternoon in late April, carrying a bakery box and wearing the nervous smile he always wore when he wanted me to like something before I understood it. Brielle stepped through my front door in white heels, a cream coat, and sunglasses pushed into her hair even though it was raining. She kissed the air near my cheek and said, "Marlene, this place is charming." Charming is a word people use when they mean small, but do not want to sound rude. I served chicken salad, fruit, and the lemon cake Trevor had brought. Brielle took 3 bites of food and asked where the bathroom was. On her way back, she walked slowly past the hallway, glanced into the guest room, then toward the balcony. I watched her eyes measure the space the way county appraisers used to measure lot lines. She asked what my HOA fee was. She asked whether the parking space came with the unit. She asked whether the building allowed long-term guests. Then she asked, almost casually, "Does your building allow family transfers if someone needs help managing a unit?" Trevor laughed too quickly. Brielle thinks like a homeowner before she even owns anything. Brielle smiled. My mother says the same thing. I smiled because that was what mothers do when they first meet the woman their son wants to love. They give the benefit of the doubt the way other people give flowers, hoping something good will grow from it. But I remembered that question. Family transfers, managing a unit, long-term guests. Those were not the questions of a woman admiring a balcony. Those were the questions of a woman trying to figure out how close she could get to a door. At the end of that visit, while Trevor carried dishes into the kitchen, Brielle stood beside my balcony doors and said, "You must get lonely here." "Sometimes," I said, "but lonely is not the same as unsafe." Her smile tightened. "Of course, I just mean, at your stage of life, it might be nice to have help close by." I was 67 then. I still carried 20-pound bags of potting soil for the flower shop and could read a warranty deed without moving my lips. But I nodded because I had spent enough years around documents to know that first sentences are often only the top page of a much thicker file. The little comments began after that. At first, they were soft enough that Trevor could pretend they were kindness. "Marlene, have you thought about a place with less maintenance?" "Marlene, stairs get dangerous before people realize it." "Marlene, my friend's grandmother moved into a senior community and absolutely loves bingo night." "I live in a condo with an elevator and a maintenance crew. The most dangerous stair in my life was the single step into Brielle's assumptions." When Trevor and Brielle got engaged, the comments changed tone. They came more often, carried more urgency, and began arriving in pairs. Brielle would make a suggestion, then Trevor would repeat a gentler version 10 minutes later, as if the idea had formed naturally inside him. "Mom, Brielle's just worried." "Mom, it would be temporary." "Mom, nobody is saying you have to give up the condo forever." But they simply had not learned the correct words yet. The first time I understood the plan clearly was 3 months before the wedding. Brielle invited herself to my condo with a folder under her arm, Trevor trailing behind her with 2 coffees and no spine. She placed the folder on my kitchen table and opened it like a sales presentation. Inside were brochures for 3 senior living communities. The first had smiling silver-haired couples holding pickleball paddles. The second had a dining room full of white tablecloths. The third had a photograph of an art class and the words "Independent Living" with "Peace of Mind" printed across the top. "I'm not moving," I said. Brielle gave me the patient smile people use when they have already decided you are the problem. "No one is forcing you, Marlene. We are just starting a conversation." "No," I said, touching the brochure. "You started the conversation without me." Trevor shifted in his chair. "Mom, come on." Brielle tapped one manicured nail against the top brochure. "Trevor and I are starting a life together. We're going to want children soon. We're renting a 1-bedroom apartment that barely fits us. Your condo has 2 bedrooms and is in the perfect area. It just seems selfish not to consider what would help the whole family." The whole family. Another phrase people use when they want one person to give up something and everyone else to call it unity. "I bought this condo with your father," I said to Trevor. "We paid for it over 19 years. I buried him while living in it. I am not leaving it because your fiancé likes the balcony." Brielle's face changed for 1 second. Only one. The polished concern slipped and something hard showed underneath. Then she smiled again. "No one said anything about the balcony." But she had looked at it before she looked at me. After they left, I noticed one brochure still on my table. I reached to throw it away, then stopped. Tucked inside the back pocket was an intake form from one of the senior communities. My name was already written at the top. Marlene Voss, age 69, living alone, widow, emergency contact, Trevor Voss. Under health and daily concerns, someone had checked a small box beside memory issues. I stood in my kitchen for a long time looking at that check mark. It was not a mistake. It was not kindness. It was a door being built in paper form, one they hoped to push me through later. That night, I made my first copy. I took the intake form to the small printer in my den, scanned it, saved it to a folder on my computer labeled Household Records, then placed the original in a brown accordion file Stanley had used for tax receipts. It still smelled faintly like paper dust and the peppermint candies he kept in his desk drawer. I did not call Trevor. I did not accuse Brielle. I did not cry. I had learned something in the records office that most families learn too late. The first person to stay calm usually gets the clearest paper trail. 2 weeks later, the senior residents called me. I was at the flower shop, trimming the thorns from 24 red roses for an anniversary order, when my cell phone rang. The woman on the line introduced herself as an intake coordinator from Willow Creek Senior Living. She spoke in the cheerful, careful voice of someone trained to make life changes sound like spa packages. Mrs. Voss, we're calling to confirm your private tour next Tuesday at 11. Your daughter-in-law mentioned you might be anxious, so we wanted to reassure you that our memory support wing is very warm and comfortable. I almost cut my thumb on the rose stem. My daughter-in-law scheduled a tour. There was a pause. Paper rustled on the other end. Yes, ma'am, Brielle Carver. She said your son would attend as well. It says here there may be some recent concerns about independent decision-making. I looked down at the roses in my hands. Red petals, green stems, thorns clipped off one by one. There are no concerns about my decision-making, I said. Oh, the woman said, now less cheerful. I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood the notes. You did not misunderstand them. Someone wrote them. I asked her to email me the appointment confirmation and intake summary. To her credit, she did. I printed both that evening and placed them behind the first intake form in Stanley's brown file. That was when I stopped calling it a misunderstanding, even in my own mind. A few days after that, I learned about the debt. I did not snoop. I did not hack. I did not chase rumors. I opened my own bank account and looked at the transfers I had made for my son, because sometimes the truth is not hidden. Sometimes it is sitting in plain sight under names you softened because you loved someone. 32 months of help. $1,200 here when Trevor said rent was tight. $384 for car insurance because he was between billing cycles. $700 for what he called an emergency apartment fee. $2,000 when Brielle's credit card needed a temporary rescue before the engagement party. Another $1,500 when Trevor said the wedding photographer would cancel without a deposit. He always promised it was the last time. He always thanked me quickly, almost nervously, then disappeared until the next crisis. I had not minded helping at first. He was my son. Mothers make excuses with both hands. I told myself grief had made him scattered after Stanley died. I told myself Brielle wanted a life that Trevor could not afford yet, and he was embarrassed. I told myself temporary help did not mean permanent dependence. But numbers have no sentiment. When I printed the ledger and added the columns, the total came to $54,860 over 32 months. That did not include the lease guarantee. Trevor and Brielle's apartment was leased under their names, but I had signed as guarantor when Trevor told me the landlord required extra security because he had recently changed jobs. Just a formality, Mom, he had said. We'll never need you to pay anything. A formality is another word people use when they want your signature before they want your understanding. I pulled out my copy of the lease guarantee. There it was. My name, my signature, my obligation if they failed to pay. It was valid through the end of December, 3 months after the wedding. They were behind twice already. I knew because Trevor had called me both times from parking lots, voice tight, saying he just needed help until payday. I had paid because I was still living under the old idea that helping him stand was different from allowing him to lean. Then came the wedding venue. Briarstone Hotel required a guarantee for certain optional charges: open bar extension, after-party suite, next morning brunch, extra floral refrigeration, and valet overflow. Brielle's father, Bruce Carver, had told everyone he was handling the wedding. He liked to say it with his shoulders back, like generosity had muscles. But 6 weeks before the wedding, Trevor came to my condo after dinner and sat at my kitchen table twisting a napkin in his hands. Mom, I hate to ask. People who say that often do not hate asking. They hate hearing no. He said the venue needed a backup payment authorization. He said it would not be charged. He said Bruce's business account was temporarily tied up. He said if the paperwork was not submitted by Friday, Brielle would be humiliated. He said it would break her heart. I looked at my son across the same table where I had packed his school lunches, signed field trip forms, and helped him with spelling words. I should have asked more questions. I should have told him love does not require you to guarantee another family's performance. But he looked tired, and I was still a mother, and grief had taught me that losing one person makes you cling harder to the ones left. So I signed the venue guarantee for the optional charges only, not the whole wedding, not the ceremony, not the dinner, just the extras Brielle insisted made it elegant. I kept a copy. By then, I was no longer just saving papers. I was building a record. Ms. Loretta Rhodes entered the story because of a sentence Trevor said one afternoon that left a cold place in my chest. He came over without Brielle, which had become rare, and stood in my living room looking at Stanley's old framed photographs on the shelf. Do you still have Dad's property papers somewhere? He asked. What property papers? You know, condo stuff, old deed, whatever you used when you bought it. It's a title record, not whatever. He smiled weakly. Right, sorry. Why do you need it? He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't. Brielle was just saying it would be useful to have everything organized if, something happened. If I died. His face went pale. Mom. If I became incompetent. He flinched at that word. I had not chosen it by accident. No one is saying that, he said. Someone checked a memory concern box on a senior living intake form with my name on it. Someone scheduled me for a tour of a memory support wing. Silence. His eyes moved once fast toward the kitchen table. There are silences that hide ignorance, and silences that hide guilt. A mother knows the difference, even when she wishes she did not. After he left, I called Ms. Rhodes. She had handled Stanley's estate after he died, and before becoming an estate attorney, she had worked in title disputes for 15 years. She was a woman with silver hair, dark glasses, and the gift of making reckless people feel overdressed. I brought her everything: the intake form, the tour confirmation, the lease guarantee, the transfer ledger, the venue guarantee, screenshots of texts from Brielle, a photo of the brochures, the unsigned temporary occupancy agreement they had left in my mailbox 2 days earlier with a sticky note that said just to make things easier after the wedding. Ms. Rhodes read in silence for almost 20 minutes. She did not gasp. She did not say, "How awful." Good attorneys do not waste your money reacting to facts. She lined the papers up by date, tapped the senior intake form twice, and said, "This is where they are trying to create a story." What story? That you are aging, isolated, unreasonable, and in need of guidance. Once that story exists, pressure over housing becomes easier to justify. I felt my throat tighten. It's my son. Yes, she said, not coldly, not gently, simply. And that is why you need documents more than anyone. That was the first day I heard the phrase elder financial abuse risk applied to my own life. I did not like it. It sounded too formal, too distant, too much like something that happened to women in pamphlets. I wanted to believe my situation was softer than that, but paperwork has no interest in what you want to believe. It only records what people do. Ms. Rhodes asked me a question I did not want to answer. If they ask you publicly for the condo, will Trevor protect you? I looked at the transfer ledger on her desk. 32 months of his emergencies, 32 months of my excuses. I don't know, I said. She removed her glasses and looked at me. That means no. A week later, my building manager called. Peter had managed my condo building for 9 years. He knew every resident's dog by name, changed hallway bulbs before anyone complained, and had once helped Stanley carry a broken recliner down to the service elevator without asking why a dying man was suddenly determined to get rid of ugly furniture. Marlene, he said, I wanted to check something before I did anything. His tone made me sit down. What happened? Your son called the office. He said after the wedding he might need to be added as emergency access. He mentioned helping manage your unit if you were traveling or not feeling well. His fiancée also asked whether spouses of immediate family could be added to the guest authorization system. I closed my eyes. There are moments when betrayal stops being a feeling and becomes a procedure. Did you add anyone? Of course not, Peter said. You have to authorize that in writing. Send me a note documenting the call. He was quiet for a second. Do you need help? That question almost broke me, not because it was complicated, but because it was clean. He did not tell me what a good mother would do. He did not say Trevor meant well. He did not ask whether I was overreacting. Yes, I said, I need the note. He emailed it within 10 minutes. I printed it and put it in the brown file. The week before the wedding, the pressure sharpened. Brielle stopped pretending entirely. She came to my condo with her mother Kathleen and a garment bag over one arm. Trevor was not with them. That alone told me the visit was not social. Kathleen walked through my living room as if she had already decided where her daughter's sofa would go. Marlene, Brielle said, we need clarity before the wedding. About what? About the condo. It is mine, that is clear. Kathleen made a small sound, half laugh, half sigh. You know, defensiveness is very common when older people feel their independence is being questioned. I looked at her. And greed is very common when younger people see square footage they did not pay for. Brielle's eyes narrowed. Kathleen placed the garment bag over one of my dining chairs without asking. No one is trying to take anything. Trevor and Brielle simply need a stable first year. You could spend that year in a community with meals, activities, staff, transportation. It would be good for you. I have meals, I have activities, I have a car, I have a building manager, I have friends, I have a lawyer. The word lawyer changed the air. Brielle recovered first. That sounds dramatic. So does filling out a senior residence intake form, scheduling me for a memory support tour, and asking my building about access privileges without my permission. Kathleen's mouth tightened. Brielle walked to the balcony doors and looked outside. You're making this ugly. No, I said, I'm making it accurate. She stepped closer to me. Do you know how embarrassing it is for Trevor to have a mother who won't help him? My parents are doing everything for this wedding. Everyone sees it. Everyone knows. And you sit here with an empty bedroom and act like giving your son a start would kill you. Your parents are not doing everything. Her face went still. I should not have said it, not yet, but I wanted to see whether she knew. What is that supposed to mean? She asked. It means you should be careful when you build a performance on someone else's signature. For the first time since I had met her, Brielle looked uncertain. Then Kathleen touched her arm, and the mask returned. You're confused, Brielle said softly. That's what worries us. There it was again, the story they were building. I smiled then, not because I was amused, because 27 years in a county records office teaches you that sometimes the person trying hardest to sound calm is the one closest to panic. No, Brielle, I said, I am very clear. 2 nights before the wedding, Trevor came alone. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, tie loosened, phone buzzing every few minutes. He sat in my kitchen and did not accept tea. Mom, why are you fighting this so hard? Because it is my home. It would still be yours. Then why do you need the keys? He rubbed his eyes. Because I'm trying to make my marriage work before it starts. That sentence hurt more than I expected, and you think my home is the payment for that. He looked at me then, truly looked, but only for a moment. Brielle feels like you don't respect her. Brielle wants my condo. She wants stability. She wants my condo. His face hardened. Dad would have helped me. The kitchen seemed to shift around me. Stanley had been dead 4 years, and people still used him when they wanted something from me. It is a cruel thing to put words into a dead man's mouth, because the dead cannot defend their silence. Your father, I said carefully, spent 19 years helping me pay for this condo so I would never be forced out of my home by someone else's emergency. Trevor stood. You always do this. You make everything about documents and records and rules. Because documents and records and rules protect people when love stops doing its job. He looked wounded by that, which almost fooled me. Then he said, if you make Brielle feel unwelcome at the wedding, I don't know if she'll forgive you. I thought of all the checks, all the transfers, all the phone calls from parking lots, all the times I had chosen not to ask why his crisis always became my bill. I said, will you? He did not answer. The rehearsal dinner was held in a private room at a restaurant with low lights and high prices. I wore a navy dress Stanley had loved and my old pearl earrings. When I arrived, the seating chart placed me at table 6, near 2 distant cousins and a groomsman's aunt. The card did not say Marlene Voss. It said Trevor's mother. Brielle's parents sat at the center table. Brielle's college friends sat closer to my son than I did. When Trevor saw where I had been placed, his face twitched, but he said nothing. Brielle floated through the room accepting compliments and pretending not to notice me. During dinner, Kathleen stood to give a toast. She spoke about family, sacrifice, the joining of households, the generosity required to help young love begin. She looked at me when she said that last part. People followed her eyes. I could feel the room quietly weighing me, deciding whether I was one of those difficult mothers who could not let go. Then Brielle stood, glass in hand, and smiled toward me. And to Marlene, she said, Trevor's mother, we know transitions can be hard, especially when life changes faster than we're ready for, but we are so grateful for every small step toward becoming one family. Small step. Transition. One family. She made moving me out of my own home sound like a bridal tradition. I did not stand. I did not answer. I folded the seating card and placed it in my purse beside the copy of the intake form. As I left the restaurant that night, I passed 2 bridesmaids standing near the host station. One of them whispered, I heard they already have her place lined up after the honeymoon. The other said, that's good, newlyweds need space. I kept walking. That was the thing about lies. Once spoken confidently enough, they began renting rooms in other people's minds. The wedding day arrived bright and dry, with a hard blue sky that made every building look sharper. I woke early, made coffee, and sat alone at my kitchen table. Stanley's photograph was across from me, the one taken on our balcony the first spring after we moved in. He was holding a mug, smiling at something outside the frame. I touched the edge of the photograph and said, I may lose him tonight. Of course Stanley did not answer. But I remembered what he had written in the letter Ms. Rhodes found after he died, the one he had tucked behind our insurance papers. Never sign away shelter to keep peace. I folded that sentence into my handbag like a prayer. At the ceremony, I sat in the second row because even Brielle knew better than to put me in the back when people were watching. Trevor looked handsome. He always did in dark suits. When he saw me, he gave a small smile, the kind a guilty person gives when they hope love will cover the invoice. Brielle walked down the aisle on Bruce Carver's arm, glowing, expensive, certain. People cried. Phones rose, music swelled. I tried, for the length of the ceremony, to find the part of me that could simply be a mother watching her son marry. I found it for a few moments. It was still there, bruised but breathing. Then during cocktail hour, Brielle pulled me aside near the hallway leading to the bridal suite. "You need to give Trevor the keys tonight," she said. "No hello, no thank you for coming, no we're family now." The answer is no. Her smile did not move. "Don't do this at my wedding." "I'm not doing anything at your wedding." "You are humiliating us." "I have not said a word to anyone." "You're making Trevor choose." That was when I understood. In Brielle's mind, refusing to surrender was an attack. Boundaries always feel violent to people who plan to cross them. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "After the honeymoon, we are not going back to that apartment. I told people we had something arranged. My parents think we have something arranged. Trevor thinks if he talks to you right, you'll stop being stubborn." "Trevor thinks that." Her eyes flashed. "He knows you love him." "I do." "Then act like it." I looked at her white dress, the tiny pearl buttons down the sleeves, the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist that I later learned was still not paid off. "Love is not a deed transfer." Her face hardened. "You're going to regret making me look like a liar." "Only you can make yourself look like that." She leaned in so close, I could smell champagne on her breath. "Then, don't expect to be treated like family tonight." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she had just revealed what I had been afraid to say out loud for months. Family, to her, was not a relationship. It was a reward system. Obey and you belong, refuse and you are removed. I returned to the ballroom with my keys still in my purse. Dinner passed in fragments. Toasts, laughter, knife against plate, the photographer asking people to gather closer, Trevor avoiding my eyes, Brielle touching his arm every time he looked toward me like she could steer him by the sleeve. I sat at table 4 with a retired neighbor of Bruce's and 2 cousins who asked me twice if I was excited to have grandchildren soon. I said, "We'll see," because the truth was too heavy for chicken and asparagus. At 8:35, the wedding planner announced the first dance. Trevor and Brielle moved to the center of the ballroom under warm lights. For 3 minutes, they looked like a picture of happiness. That is the thing about pictures. They do not have to confess who paid for the frame. After the dance, Trevor came to my table. Brielle stood 10 feet behind him, watching. "Mom," he said softly, "can we talk near the hall?" "No." His face tightened. "Please." If this is about my keys, the answer is still no. He glanced over his shoulder. Brielle saw the glance and came to us. "Marlene," she said brightly, too brightly, "this is not the time to be difficult." The nearby tables quieted. People sense conflict before they understand it, the way animals sense storms. "I agree," I said. "This is your wedding, enjoy it. Then give Trevor the keys and stop turning this into a battle." My hand moved to my purse. Not to get the keys. To hold the broken edge of Stanley's letter folded inside. "No." She stared at me. "Excuse me." "No." The slap came before anyone could breathe. Her palm struck my left cheek so hard my glasses flew sideways. For a second, the ballroom became light and sound without shape. Then the glasses hit the floor, and the silence rushed in. That is where the night began for everyone else. For me, it was where 6 months of paper finally met the room it was meant for. After I called Ms. Rhodes, I did not go back into the ballroom immediately. I went to the ladies' room and looked at my face in the mirror. Without my glasses, my reflection was soft around the edges, but I could see the red mark across my cheek. A younger woman in a green dress stood by the sink pretending to fix her lipstick. She had seen everything. She wanted to say something but was afraid to become involved. Finally, she whispered, "Are you okay?" "No," I said. Then I took a paper towel, wet it, and pressed it lightly to my cheek. "But I will be." When I returned to the corridor, Mr. Jonah Wilcox, the venue billing manager, was standing near the reception desk with a tablet in his hand. He was a neat man in his 40s with a careful voice. I knew him because he had sent me the guarantee forms. "Mrs. Voss," he said quietly, "one of our servers told me there was an incident. Do you need medical assistance?" "No, but I will need your office in about 10 minutes." His eyebrows moved slightly. "My office?" "Yes, I believe there are payment guarantees and event authorizations we need to review." His professional expression sharpened. Venue people understand the language of payment faster than the language of family. "Of course," he said, "I'll make it available." I stood in the corridor while the wedding continued. Every few minutes someone came out, saw me, and quickly looked away. A groomsman walked past and murmured, "Sorry about that," with the tone of a man apologizing for rain. Kathleen Carver came out once, saw me speaking to Mr. Wilcox, and stopped. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Waiting." "For what?" "The record." She did not like that word. People who prefer stories often dislike records. Before she could ask more, the hotel entrance doors opened, and Ms. Rhodes walked in carrying the brown accordion file against her hip. She wore a charcoal suit, low heels, and an expression that made the hallway feel suddenly less like a wedding venue and more like a place where facts had arrived on time. She looked at my cheek, then at my broken glasses in my hand. She did not touch me, because she knew me well enough not to make me feel fragile in public. "Are you ready?" she asked. I looked through the ballroom doors. Brielle was at the head table now, laughing too loudly. Trevor sat beside her, pale and still. My son looked like a man waiting for the floor to decide whether it would hold him. "Yes," I said, "but not in the middle of the ballroom." Ms. Rhodes nodded. "Good, we'll use the office. Let them walk to the truth." Mr. Wilcox led us to a small administrative office behind the reception area. It had a desk, 3 chairs, a printer, a locked cabinet, and a wall calendar showing event bookings through December. It was not dramatic. No marble floor, no chandelier, no flowers. Just a room where bills were processed, signatures were checked, and people who performed wealth met the part of wealth that required payment. That was exactly where this needed to happen. Mr. Wilcox sent the wedding planner to ask Trevor, Brielle, Kathleen, and Bruce to come to the office. He used the phrase billing clarification, which moved them faster than family matter ever would have. Brielle entered first, still flushed with triumph and annoyance. "What is this?" Trevor followed, eyes moving from me to Ms. Rhodes to the file on the desk. Bruce Carver came in with his jaw set, Kathleen beside him whispering, "This is completely inappropriate." Ms. Rhodes placed the brown accordion file on the desk and opened it. Brielle laughed once. "Are you serious? You brought a lawyer to my wedding because you got emotional." Ms. Rhodes looked at her over the top of her glasses. "Mrs. Carver-Voss, I am here because my client was struck in public after refusing to surrender access to her residence." Brielle's mouth tightened. "That is not what happened." "No," Ms. Rhodes said. "Then I'm sure the photographer, the servers, and 130 guests will all be mistaken in exactly the same way." Bruce stepped forward. "Let's not turn this into a legal circus. This is a family disagreement." "No," I said. My voice surprised me. It was calm. "A disagreement is when 2 people want different restaurants. Your daughter hit me because I would not give her my home." Trevor flinched. Brielle pointed at me. "Your home? You mean that condo you're hoarding while your son starts a marriage?" Ms. Rhodes removed the first document from the file. "Let's begin there." She placed a stamped title record on the desk. I knew that paper. I had ordered the certified copy myself. My name printed clearly across the ownership line. Marlene Voss. Sole owner, no co-owner, no transfer pending. No mortgage, no lien. Ms. Rhodes turned it so everyone could see. This is the current title record for Mrs. Voss's condominium, she said. It confirms sole ownership. Trevor Voss has no ownership interest, no management authority, no survivorship rights recorded, and no legal basis to occupy, lease, control, or transfer the property without Mrs. Voss's written consent. Brielle rolled her eyes. We know it's in her name, that's why we asked her. You did not ask, Ms. Rhodes said. You built a plan around a home you did not own. The sentence landed harder than if she had shouted. Ms. Rhodes placed the unsigned temporary occupancy agreement on top of the title record. Brielle's handwriting was on the sticky note attached to it, just to make things easier after the wedding. This document has no force, Ms. Rhodes said. Mrs. Voss did not sign it, but it is useful because it shows intent. Bruce's face changed. Intent, what are you implying? Ms. Rhodes looked at him. I'm not implying, I'm organizing. Then she removed the senior residence intake form and the tour confirmation. For the first time, Brielle looked truly nervous. Kathleen said quickly, that was informational. Ms. Rhodes tapped the checked box beside memory issues. Who completed this portion? No one answered. I looked at Trevor. His eyes filled, but tears are not the same as courage. Ms. Rhodes continued, Mrs. Voss never authorized this application. She has no documented memory diagnosis. She has never requested placement. Yet this form presents her as a widow living alone with possible cognitive concerns. The facility also confirmed a private tour was scheduled without her consent. Brielle's voice rose. Oh my God, we were worried about her. You slapped her, Ms. Rhodes said. The room went quiet. Mr. Wilcox looked down at his tablet. Kathleen reached for Brielle's hand, but Brielle pulled away. Then Ms. Rhodes removed Peter's building access note. This is a written statement from Mrs. Voss's building manager, she said. It documents an attempt by Trevor Voss and Brielle Carver to inquire about adding access privileges to Mrs. Voss's building system after the wedding. Mrs. Voss did not authorize that request. Trevor whispered, I only asked. I looked at him. You asked the building before you asked me. He looked down. Then Ms. Rhodes removed the transfer ledger. It was not fancy, just pages of dates, amounts, bank references, notes from my account, rent help, insurance, emergency fee, credit card, photographer deposit, apartment shortage, 32 months of my private shame laid out as public fact. Ms. Rhodes did not read every line. She did not need to, she read enough. Over the last 32 months, Mrs. Voss transferred $54,860 to or on behalf of Trevor Voss and Brielle Carver. This includes recurring rent assistance, car insurance payments, credit card support, and wedding-related deposits. Mrs. Voss has documentation for each payment. Bruce turned to Trevor. What is she talking about? Trevor's lips parted. No sound came out. Bruce's voice lowered. You told me you were covering the apartment. Trevor looked at Brielle. Kathleen stared at her daughter. You told us Trevor was financially stable. Brielle's face had gone pale under the makeup. He was, we were, it was temporary. 32 months is not temporary, I said. That is a lifestyle. Trevor sat down in the chair nearest the wall, as if his legs had quietly resigned. I had imagined that moment many times. I thought I might feel satisfaction when the truth landed. I did not. I felt tired. I felt like a mother reading a bill for love that had been charged in secret and denied in public. Brielle suddenly laughed, sharp and desperate. This is ridiculous. You're all acting like she's some perfect victim. She's confused. She hoards papers and acts like that makes her powerful. Ms. Rhodes looked at the ledger, then back at Brielle. Confused people do not usually keep 32 months of clean payment records. Mr. Wilcox's mouth tightened slightly, as if he was trying not to react. Ms. Rhodes placed the lease guarantee on the desk next. This is the current lease guarantee for Mr. Voss and Mrs. Carver Voss's apartment, she said. Mrs. Voss is guarantor through December. She has instructed my office to notify the landlord that she will not renew or extend any guarantee beyond the current term, and she will not sign any new guarantor documents. Brielle's voice cracked. You can't do that. Ms. Rhodes looked at her. She can refuse future liability. But we need that apartment. No, I said. You needed me to be responsible for it. Trevor looked up then. Mom, please. That one word, please, almost found the old door. The one I used to open every time he sounded afraid. But then my cheek throbbed, and I saw him again in the ballroom, looking at the floor. No, I said. Mr. Wilcox cleared his throat. There is also the matter of the optional event charges. Brielle turned to him sharply. What optional charges? He looked at his tablet, then at me. Mrs. Voss is the payment guarantor on the open bar extension, after-party suite, valet overflow, floral refrigeration overage, and tomorrow morning's private brunch. The base reception dinner and ceremony package are paid, but these optional additions are pending final authorization. Bruce stared at Brielle. You said that was handled. It is handled, Brielle said. Mr. Wilcox's expression remained professional. It was handled through Mrs. Voss's guarantee. Mrs. Voss has the right to withdraw authorization for charges not yet incurred. Kathleen's voice sharpened. Are you saying the bar will close? I am saying, Mr. Wilcox replied, that unless a new payment authorization is provided, the open bar extension cannot continue past the prepaid package window, the after-party suite will be released, and tomorrow's brunch will be cancelled. Brielle looked toward the wall, toward the ballroom beyond it, where music still played and guests still believed the wedding was simply taking a strange pause. Mr. Wilcox added, the music can continue, but the unpaid extras cannot. That was the line that broke something. Brielle turned on me then, not with the fake softness, not with concern, but with full naked fury. You miserable old woman! Trevor stood. Brielle, stop. She pointed at the papers. You planned this. You came here to ruin my wedding. I touched the broken glasses in my purse. No, I came here to watch my son get married. You brought my home into the room. You brought my age into the room. You brought your hand across my face. I only brought the records. Bruce dragged a hand over his mouth. Kathleen sank into the other chair, staring at the transfer ledger like it had insulted her personally. Mr. Wilcox waited with his tablet because hotels do not pause billing for family collapse. Ms. Rhodes removed one final sheet. It was a letter on her office letterhead, already signed by me that afternoon, because part of me had known even before the slap that the night might come to this. This letter, she said, notifies all present parties that Mrs. Voss will not discuss relocation, property access, power of attorney, future guarantor obligations, or housing-related arrangements except through my office. It also directs Trevor Voss and Brielle Carver Voss not to enter Mrs. Voss's building or attempt to obtain keys, access codes, or resident permissions. Trevor looked at me, as if I had become someone he did not recognize. Maybe I had. Or maybe, for the first time, he was seeing the woman who had existed before motherhood trained her to soften every edge for him. Mom, he whispered, you're cutting me off. I looked at the man I had raised. My son, my only child, the boy who once slept with one hand curled around the sleeve of my robe after a thunderstorm, the man who had let his wife hit me because he still hoped my love would be more obedient than my dignity. No, I said, I am letting go of the part of you that kept reaching into my life like it belonged to you. He sat down again. Brielle stormed out first. Kathleen followed her. Bruce stayed long enough to ask Mr. Wilcox what card he could use to keep the bar open. His voice was low and furious. Not at his daughter, not at my son, not at what had been done to me, but at the inconvenience of being caught without control. That told me everything about where Brielle had learned love. Trevor remained in the office after everyone else left. The music from the ballroom seeped through the wall, muffled and cheerful, grotesque in its persistence. "I didn't know she would hit you," he said. I believed him. That was the worst part. I believed he did not know she would hit me. I also knew he had helped build the room where she thought she could. "You knew she wanted my keys." He closed his eyes. "You knew about the senior living form." His face crumpled. "You knew she called me confused." A tear slid down his cheek. I thought if we got through the wedding, I could fix it. I shook my head. "Trevor, you were not trying to fix it, you were trying to survive long enough for me to give in." He covered his face with both hands. "There are mothers who would have gone to him then. I know because I had been that mother for most of my life. I had gone to him through fevers, debts, breakups, job losses, parking lot phone calls, and late-night apologies that always ended with a new transfer. But that night, with my broken glasses in my purse and the red mark on my cheek, I stayed where I was." Ms. Rhodes touched the file. "Mrs. Voss, would you like to leave?" I looked at Trevor. "Yes." He lowered his hands. "Mom, please don't go like this." "How else should I go?" He had no answer, again. I left the venue through the side entrance because I did not want to walk back through the ballroom, not from shame, but because the room had already taken enough from me. Mr. Wilcox arranged for a hotel security employee to walk me to my car. Ms. Rhodes followed in her own vehicle until I reached my building. She did not ask to come upstairs. She simply waited while I entered the lobby, nodded to Peter at the night desk, and disappeared into the elevator with my purse held tightly in both hands. My condo was quiet when I opened the door. No flowers waiting to be moved. No brochures on the table. No Brielle measuring the balcony with her eyes. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator, the lamp I always left on in the living room, Stanley's photograph on the shelf, and the small, ordinary mercy of a home that still belonged to me. I locked the door behind me. Then I sat on the floor of my entryway and cried. Not delicately, not gracefully. I cried the way people cry when the body finally understands what the mind has been documenting for months. I cried for the slap. I cried for the silence after it. I cried for Trevor at 6, Trevor at 16, Trevor in a tuxedo saying, "Don't make a scene." I cried for every check I had written while telling myself a mother's generosity did not need to be acknowledged. I cried for the version of myself who thought if she stayed useful enough, she would remain loved. At 11:17 p.m., my phone lit up. "Brielle, you ruined everything." Then another. "Brielle, everyone knows what you did." Then Kathleen. "Kathleen, you chose paperwork over family. I hope you are proud." Then Bruce. "Bruce, we will be reviewing our options." Then Trevor. "Mom, can I come over tomorrow?" I stared at that last message for a long time. Then I typed one sentence. "No, contact Ms. Rhodes." My thumb hovered before I sent it. The old mother in me wanted to add, "I love you." The woman sitting on the floor with a bruised cheek knew that love was not in question. Access was. I sent only the sentence. The next morning, I woke with my left cheek swollen and my eyes gritty. Without glasses, the world remained blurred, so I put on an old backup pair from the kitchen drawer. The prescription was wrong, but it let me see enough. I made coffee, then called Peter. "I need to change my lock," I said. "Today?" "Yes." "Is everything all right?" "No." He did not ask more. Good people often know when questions are not the first form of help. By noon, a locksmith had replaced the deadbolt. Peter removed Trevor from my emergency access list and changed my guest permissions in the lobby system. My son's name disappeared from the approved visitor screen with one click. It should have felt dramatic. It did not. It felt like correcting a clerical error. I kept the old key. Not because I missed what it represented, but because evidence sometimes belongs in your own hand before it belongs in a trash can. At 2 in the afternoon, Ms. Rhodes called. The venue has confirmed your withdrawal of optional guarantees. No additional charges were placed on your card. Mr. Carver provided a replacement authorization for part of the remaining bar service, but the after-party suite and brunch were canceled. I pictured Brielle waking up to a canceled brunch and no after-party photos to post. I did not feel joy. I felt the strange quiet of a storm moving away from the house. Trevor called my office. Ms. Rhodes continued. What did he want? To know whether you would reconsider the lease guarantee if he apologized. I closed my eyes. Not if I was hurt, not if I needed anything, not if I was safe. If he apologized. As if apology were a coin slot in a machine that dispensed access. What did you tell him? That any apology should be made without financial conditions. I almost smiled. How did he take that? Poorly. For 2 days, I heard nothing from him directly. Brielle posted one photograph from the wedding, carefully cropped, with a caption about protecting your peace from people who carry bitterness into your joy. Several relatives liked it. One distant cousin commented, beautifully said. I blocked the post and did not reply. Then on the 3rd day, Trevor came to my building. The concierge called up. Mrs. Voss, your son is here. He says it's urgent. My hand tightened around the phone. Do not send him up. He says he just wants to talk. I understand. Do not send him up. A pause. Yes, ma'am. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Trevor, Mom, I'm downstairs. Please, I need to see you. Then. Trevor, the apartment office says they need a new guarantor for renewal. Then. Trevor, Brielle is at her parents'. Everything is falling apart. There it was, the emergency wearing the costume of remorse. I typed. I am sorry your situation is difficult. I will not discuss housing, money, keys, or guarantees. Any legal matter goes through Ms. Rhodes. He called, I let it ring. He called again, I let it ring again. After the 3rd call, he texted. So that's it. After everything, you're choosing a condo over your son. I looked around my living room. The chair Stanley used to sit in. The quilt my sister made before she moved to Arizona. The plant on the windowsill that refused to die no matter how poorly I pruned it. The small table where I paid bills and signed birthday cards. The hallway where Trevor once lined up toy cars from baseboard to baseboard. The kitchen where I had fed him, comforted him, helped him grow into a man who now thought my shelter was a symbol of selfishness. I typed. No, I am choosing not to lose both. He did not answer. The first letter from Brielle arrived a week later, not by mail, but through social media, in the form of a long message that began with I hope you understand the damage you caused and ended with Trevor will never forgive you if you keep listening to that lawyer. In between, she accused me of manipulating him, embarrassing her family, sabotaging the wedding, and using money to control them. That last accusation almost made me laugh. I had spent years using money to avoid conflict. She had mistaken the absence of my boundary for the presence of her power. Ms. Rhodes sent a formal cease and desist letter after Brielle posted a second message implying I had mental problems and had acted out at the wedding. The letter was short, factual, and apparently effective. The posts disappeared within 24 hours. Kathleen called once. I answered because part of me wanted to hear whether a mother could recognize another mother's pain across the wreckage their children had made. She did not. Marlene, she said, voice stiff. I think we all got emotional. No, I said, your daughter got violent. My son got silent, I got documents. She inhaled sharply. Brielle was under enormous stress. So was I did not hit anyone. You have to understand how much pressure young couples face now. I understand pressure. I also understand ownership. Her voice cooled. You are going to end up alone if you keep treating family like a business transaction. I looked at Stanley's photograph. Kathleen, your daughter tried to turn my home into a wedding gift and my age into a legal argument. Do not lecture me about transactions. She hung up. 3 weeks passed before Trevor tried again in person. This time he did not come to the lobby. He waited across the street near the small park visible from my balcony. I saw him from above, standing under a bare maple tree with his hands in his coat pockets. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in the way people shrink when the stories that inflated them have leaked out. My phone buzzed. Trevor, I'm across the street. I won't come in. Can you please just walk with me for 10 minutes? I watched him through the balcony door. The mother in me wanted to run down before he changed his mind. The woman I had become asked a different question. Was he asking for me, or for a way back to what I provided? I put on my coat. We walked in the park because public places keep old patterns from finding comfortable chairs. He looked tired. His wedding ring was still on his finger, but he kept turning it. Brielle's staying with her parents, he said. I did not answer. She says you humiliated her. She hit me. I know. You watched. His face twisted. I know. We walked past a bench where Stanley and I used to sit with coffee. Trevor looked at it, then away. I don't know how it got this bad. That was the first honest thing he had said. I do, I said. He stopped walking. It got this bad one excuse at a time. One transfer at a time. One time you let her call me confused. One time you let me sit away from you at the rehearsal dinner. One time you decided keeping her calm mattered more than telling me the truth. His eyes filled again. I was scared she'd leave. And you were not scared I would. He looked at me then, really looked. I thought you never would. There it was, the deepest root of the whole rotten tree. Not hatred, not even greed alone. Certainty. He thought mothers were permanent fixtures, like walls, like plumbing, like keys on hooks. Always there, always useful, always available no matter how often someone slammed the door. I almost didn't, I said. He swallowed. Can we fix this? What do you mean by fix? I mean us. What would fixed look like to you? He rubbed his hands together against the cold. I don't know, talking, maybe counseling. I can apologize properly. I can tell Brielle she was wrong. I waited. He looked at me confused. What? You haven't said what happens to my condo in this fixed version. His eyes dropped. There it was again. Not as loud as before, not as ugly, but still there, standing between us with a key in its hand. The lease renewal is due soon, he said quietly. I nodded. If I don't have a guarantor, we may have to move. Yes. And if Brielle doesn't come back? Trevor. He stopped. I am not your backup plan anymore. The words landed between us softly. I had imagined saying them with anger. Instead, they came out like a final entry in a ledger. He cried then, not dramatically, just stood in the cold with tears running down his face, looking younger and older at the same time. I'm sorry, he said. I believed that too. I believed he was sorry. I believed he was ashamed. I believed he loved me in the limited, underdeveloped way he had allowed himself to love someone he expected to keep giving. But I also knew apology could be real, and still not be enough to reopen the door. I hope you become the kind of man who understands why sorry does not come with a key, I said. He wiped his face. Can I call you? Not about money, not about housing, not about Brielle. If you call to ask how I am, I may answer. He nodded, but I could see how hard that condition was for him. He did not yet know how to approach me without a need in his hands. We parted at the edge of the park. He did not hug me. I did not offer. Some distances deserve to be measured honestly before anyone crosses them again. Winter came early that year. The first snow dusted the balcony railing in November, turning the park white by morning. I bought new glasses, a sturdy brown pair that made my face look more serious than the old ones. The optician asked if I wanted to keep the broken frames for warranty purposes. I said yes, though there was no warranty that covered what had happened to them. I placed the broken glasses in a small box in my desk drawer beside the old condo key and a copy of the stamped title record. Not as a shrine to pain, as a reminder that clarity sometimes costs something. Brielle and Trevor separated before Christmas. I heard it from Ms. Rhodes first because Brielle's attorney sent a letter suggesting I had interfered with marital stability by withdrawing financial support. Ms. Rhodes replied with dates, documents, and a sentence I read 3 times because it felt like poetry written in legal shoes. Mrs. Voss did not interfere with the marriage. She declined to subsidize it. I printed that sentence and put it in the file. Trevor moved into a smaller apartment across town with a roommate from work. He did not ask me to co-sign. That was the first hopeful thing he had done. In January, he texted me a photograph of a receipt for his own car insurance payment. Paid it myself, he wrote. I looked at the message for a long time before replying. Good. Not I'm proud of you, not yet. Pride had become too expensive to hand out on first payments, but good was true. By spring, he called once every other Sunday. The first few calls were awkward, full of weather and long pauses. He asked about the flower shop. I asked about work. He did not mention Brielle. He did not mention the condo. He did not ask for money. Slowly, carefully, we began building a new language out of subjects that did not require me to rescue him. One afternoon in April, he said, "Mom, I've been thinking about Dad." I sat down at the kitchen table. What about him? He would be ashamed of me. I looked at Stanley's photograph. Yes, I said. Trevor exhaled shakily. I thought you'd say no. Your father loved you. He would still be ashamed. He was quiet for a long time. I think I needed to hear that. You probably did. That was as close as we came to forgiveness that day. It was not a movie moment. No swelling music. No embrace in the rain. Just a hard truth spoken without cruelty and received without escape. Sometimes that is where repair begins, if it begins at all. A year after the slap, I hosted Thanksgiving in my condo. Not a large gathering. My sister came from Arizona. Peter from downstairs stopped by for pie. A friend from the flower shop brought rolls. Trevor came alone, carrying a sweet potato casserole he had made badly but honestly. He stood at my door, holding the dish with both hands. I can leave if this is too much, he said. I looked at him. He had not asked to bring anyone. He had not asked to stay overnight. He had not asked about the spare room. Come in, I said. He stepped inside slowly, like a guest. That mattered. He wiped his shoes. That mattered too. In the kitchen, he set the casserole on the counter and noticed the small hook near the door where his spare key used to hang years before. The hook was still there, empty. He touched it once. I remember that. So do I. I don't expect it back. I looked at him carefully. Good. During dinner, he talked with my sister about his job. He helped clear plates without being asked. When he left, he hugged me gently and did not hold on too long. At the door, he said, "Thank you for letting me come." You're welcome. He looked at me, eyes bright but steady. I know this doesn't fix everything. No, I said, but it doesn't break anything either. After he left, I washed the plates and stood alone in my kitchen listening to the quiet. It was not the old quiet, the lonely one Brielle had tried to use as evidence against me. It was a full quiet, a chosen quiet, a quiet that belonged to someone who had stopped paying for noise just to call it family. That night, I opened the desk drawer and took out the old condo key. The brass had dulled. There was a small scratch near the top from years of use. For a moment, I remembered handing Trevor his first copy after Stanley died. Just in case, I had said. Back then it had meant trust. Later it had become assumption, then expectation, then threat. I carried the key to the balcony and stood under the cold November sky. Down below, the park lamps glowed through bare branches. Somewhere in the building, a dog barked once. A car passed on the street, tires hissing on damp pavement. Ordinary sounds, safe sounds. I did not throw the key away. That would have been too dramatic, and life after betrayal is rarely dramatic. It is practical. It is repetitive. It is small choices made again and again until your nervous system believes you are allowed to be safe. I put the key in a plain white envelope. On the front I wrote, "No longer active." Then I placed it back in the drawer with the broken glasses and the stamped title record. People think revenge is a loud thing. They think it looks like shouting in a ballroom or destroying someone in public. But the strongest revenge I ever took was not the moment Ms. Rhodes opened that file. It was not the cancelled after-party or Brielle's face when the transfer ledger came out. It was not even watching my son realize that my silence had never meant ignorance. The strongest revenge was waking up the next morning in my own bed, in my own condo, behind my own new lock, owing no explanation to anyone who thought love meant surrender. Brielle wanted my key because she thought my home was the easiest thing to take. Trevor let her ask because he thought my love was the easiest thing to bend. They were both wrong. My home was not empty space waiting for a younger couple's life to begin. It was the place Stanley and I built one payment at a time. It was the table where I learned to eat alone without calling it failure. It was the balcony where I mourned, healed, and watched seasons change without asking anyone's permission to remain. It was not too much space for a woman my age. It was exactly enough room for my dignity to come back and sit down. And the key stayed on my table, not in my son's pocket.